Hi everyone, thank you for joining us for our session today on talking to young people about relationships. My name is Alex and I'm the Health Promotion Specialist for the West and I am youth focused. I'm joined here today with my colleague Paige.
Hi everyone, so I'm Paige and I am the RSHE co-production coordinator here at the Essex Sexual Health Service.
Thanks, Paige. It's wonderful to have you with us. We're just going to go through what our learning objectives are for this session and then we'll get straight into the session. So our learning objectives for this session today is to identify the importance and benefits of relationships and sexual health education. You may have heard it as RSHE, but that's basically what it stands for. To be able to recognise and identify signs of unhealthy and abusive relationships, as well as being able to recognise and identify what makes a relationship healthy as well. We want young people to be equipped and yourselves to be equipped with tools and knowledge on how to support discussions at home around relationships, to have a good understanding of the local sexual health offer and other support services, and know how to support your young people if they did want to access these services and needed that support from you. So we're going to start by looking at what the RSHE curriculum is and what your young people should know. RSHE or relationship and sexual health education is now compulsory, and there has been new guidance that has come out and been released to the schools, and that is going to be in effect as of September 2026 this year, obviously. So young people will be now being taught about the characteristics of positive relationships. So what makes a relationship positive and what should they be looking for? Self-esteem, which is a really important thing that has been added to the curriculum, really important for themselves, but also on how they can show up in relationships. Consent, still going to be in there, which is really important. Skills for ending relationships and what rejection might feel like, look like, and how to handle rejection. They're going to be doing work around stereotypes, how to treat others with kindness and respect, doing some work around bullying, power imbalances as well is now in there, which is brilliant, and work around pornography and its impact on relationships. And that will be for your Key Stage 3 and above learners. So everything will be age appropriate and put into the curriculum as and when it should be being looked at and taught. Please note that if you have a child that is in any form of schooling, that this is now going to be mandatory to be learning about. So if you have any concerns about that, it's really important that you talk to the school about that. When we look at these topics, schools are advised to deliver RSHE within what we call a spiral curriculum. So this involves revisiting key topics in a developmental manner at regular intervals. Basically, what that means is that, let's say, for example, the example we've got on here is that if you had a young person aged 5 to 7 in Key Stage 1, and they were learning about the different types of touch, so good and bad touch, what their boundaries are, bodily autonomy, potentially using resources like the PANTS resource from the NSPCC. If you don't know what that is, that's okay. We do have a lot of resources that we can send out to you. Should you want them, please do email us. And then when they go up to Key Stage 2, they will be adding on to that topic. So what they've learned at the beginning, there'll be add-ons. So then we'll be looking at respecting personal space and healthy relationships. And then as they get older again, we'll be coming back to that topic of good touch, consent, and then looking at that in consent in relation to sexual activities, so hugging, kissing, those kind of things. So every time they come and they revisit the topics that they're looking at, but they add more information and education on top of that. So that's a really important way of teaching, and it acts like building blocks, basically. So one of the questions we get is, why is RSHE so important? So Sex Education Forum run a nationwide poll asking for young people's experiences of RSHE within their schools. This is a nationwide poll, and this is the poll that was run in 2024. Some of the feedback that we got from the young people was that if this young person had learned about like RSHE earlier, maybe some of the mistakes would not have happened that they made. They believe that RSHE is important because they would have understood it better before it started happening to me. And they were talking about puberty and unwanted sexual attention. Then we've got, it's important because they would want to be more knowledgeable of positive relationships and where to go if they felt unsafe in a situation. So really important topics coming up for the young people, being very clear about what they want to learn. Why is it important? Because some stuff that this young person had to learn was on their own, because they knew about it before sex education was taught. And nowadays, younger children are becoming more aware, so they should know sooner. So again, where are they getting the information from if they're having to self-teach? Is it on the internet? Are they getting it from pornography, which seems to be a really common theme? If people aren't being given this information, they will try and seek it out themselves. And that isn't always the safest way to do things. This young person would have felt more prepared and less sheltered, and they had to find out from peers. So again, relying on peers could be that there's misinformation being spread, and actually that could be quite dangerous. So we want it to become from really safe resources, safe spaces, their information. And this young person would have understood it better before it started happening to me. So again, it's just really important that they feel like they have the knowledge and the resources there so they can make decisions for themselves. They know where to get support. And one of the biggest fears that we do get from parents, carers, and lots of different people that care for young people is that they worry that by a young person actively participating in RSHE lessons means that they're going to go away and they're going to start exploring things before they're ready. They're going to be encouraged to go and have sex, for example, when actually there has been research being done, and there are really good benefits to good age-appropriate RSHE. One of those is that the young people are more likely to report sexual abuse when it's happening and know where to report to as well, know what sexual abuse is as well. They actually delay first-time sex until they're ready due to increased understanding around self-esteem, consent, what sex is, what they want from it. So actually what the studies have shown is that good RSHE actually delays the early onset of first-time sex. The young people are more likely to use contraception and condoms. So health and safety is there. So, you know, lower rates of unwanted pregnancies, but also STI transmission rates are much lower. And they're more likely to have first-time sex that is consensual. So they fully understand consent. They fully understand how to look for body cues and how to tell somebody how they feel when they do or don't want to do something as well. And we are slowly getting there. So in February 2024, 51% of young people said that their RSHE was good or very good. And that is the highest number since polling began. But only 43% of students feel included and represented within RSHE. So again, that's not great. Whilst we are getting you know, young people coming forward saying, actually, we are feeling like our RSHE is really good now. We are getting lots of information that's really important to us, that actually a lot of the students aren't feeling represented. And that might be due to not having visible disabilities on there or LGBT family representation, information for those communities. And also it might be that the resources aren't inclusive enough. So that's really important to do. Okay, I'm going to play a video now. So this is a video from the NSPCC, and it's about talking about sex and relationships, and it has some really key points in here. Fab. So we're going to move on now and just kind of build upon what this video was talking about. And we're going to talk about when to approach the subject of relationships. So they were really great like key points in that video, and one of them that we really like is that you do find regular moments, but actually we use something called a distancing technique. So the car's a perfect example where you don't have to look at each other, some of the pressure's off, and you can just have the music on, looking out the window and just talking about things. And a lot of the time that takes a lot of pressure off, especially when you're having conversations that can feel quite difficult to have. Also going on a walk, maybe when you're gaming, something like that, and when you're not having to sit opposite each other and have these conversations. So you can try and make them feel a little more accessible for your young people. Use everyday opportunities within your life, so things that you see on TV or in the media. So talking about the signs of healthy or unhealthy relationships. So if you notice something coming up, you could pause something you're watching and say, you know, oh, did you notice that? How do you feel about that? I do that with my own children, and I can tell you it drives them mad. So be mindful about how often you do that with them. Explore and talk about their friends' relationships. So if they're open to talking about their friends' relationships, you could be like, oh, how's that going? And then if they say anything that you think's worrying, you could start to explore that and see how they're feeling about that as well. really like key ways to talk about it away from them. It makes it a bit more easy to talk about. Explore and talk about power dynamics, so kind of boundaries, consent, all of those things that are really important and actually going to be in the guidance. And if they don't seem comfortable talking to you, and that's absolutely okay. Some young people aren't, some people find talking about these things really difficult, but you feel like they do need to communicate something with you. There are different ways that you could try communicating. So messaging, texting, when you're not in the same room together, maybe having agreements that you're going to talk about something, hold a space for it, and then you won't talk about it again. Obviously, safeguarding needs to happen if something comes up that's really worrisome, but maybe giving them space to talk about things they might feel shame or embarrassment about, and exploring that, and then being able, so if it was periods, for example, saying, oh, we can talk about that now, but then I won't ask you about it until you come to me again. So giving them some power in the discussions as well. But yeah, lots of little talks, not one big talk, we find works much better. So tips on how to talk to children and young people about the subject of relationships. So the most important thing we do to begin with is to explore our own biases, our own attitudes and beliefs towards relationships, what we may have been taught, what we may have seen growing up. These will all impact how we view like relationships, how they should be in the sense of what we believe. And actually young people might have a very different experience of that. And it's about not being judgmental and holding space for their feelings, and the way that they want to have relationships as well. And being mindful about how we might, if we are giving feedback, how that might come from our own experiences in the past. We always say start early to explore all relationships in their life. So don't wait for it to become like a romantic or sexual relationship. Start exploring, family relationships. Actually, what do you want to do? What don't you want to do? Do you want to hug? You don't want to hug. Showing them that they have autonomy over their own bodies, and how to address that when someone kind of pushes against that. Help them explore their boundaries, things like that. But yeah, starting early is really, really important as well. Do research and use resources to help you. So should you want any resources, which we have a lot of, at the end of this session, we will be showing you our email address, and you can email us and we can send some resources out to you. We've got, we're going to go through on the next slide, all the things we're going to cover today, and we have resources for all of these different topics. So please do reach out to us. Lots of little and often conversations. So like we said, no big conversations that feel really overwhelming. So just lots of little ones, that they can then process in their own time. They might have questions to come back to you with. And also it just reduces the shame around some of these topics, and means that they feel more open, and they don't feel as heavy as well. Create openness and be approachable. So have try not to be judgmental. Try to give yourself some time, so you're not being reactive when they might say something. Maybe take a breath and say, oh, can you explain that more to me? So you're giving yourself a bit more time if you feel triggered about something or worried about something, to really hear their side of it before reacting towards what they're saying. Answer questions truthfully, honestly, and appropriately to their age as well. And if you don't know, that's okay. You could say, you know what, I don't know the answer to that. Let's go away together and we can work out what the answer is. And it kind of brings you together as well in that knowledge seeking. Don't forget to talk about self-esteem and peer pressure and consent. So as well as when RSHE, a lot of people go straight to talking about the sex part of it because that's the bit they're worried about. Actually, there's so much before that we should be discussing. So friendship groups, the peer pressure, consent, but also self-esteem, because how you feel about yourself is really going to change how you can show up in all different types of relationships and situations. And it's really important that we do work on young people's self-esteem, especially with the amount of internet use that young people have access to nowadays as well. And then to be aware and know where to seek support for yourself. So doing this can be really difficult, especially if you've had experiences that may not be so good and your young people are coming to you with similar ones or ones that trigger you. It's really important that you can seek support away from them, where you feel supported and you feel cared for. And again, all these resources will come up later in the session. So just to be very clear about what we are going to be going through in this session, because that was just our introduction, we are going to be talking about how to support your young people in the following areas. So to begin with, we're going to be looking at consent, and then we're going to be moving on to healthy relationships. Then we're going to look at the unhealthy relationships as well, recognizing signs of abuse in relationships, ending a relationship and rejection, things around that. It's really important that young people really start to understand how rejection feels, how to react to rejection, those kind of things. Online relationships, because a lot of young people's lives are online now as well, so we need to stay up to date with that. And support services and resources that you may want to use and you may need to know about as well. And at any point during this session, if you need to pause or you want any support for yourself, you realise something's come up for you, then please do reach out to us via our email, which is at the end of this. But you can also find it on our website, Essex Sexual Health Service. Okay, so I'm going to hand over to Paige now, and we're going to start our first topic on consent.
Thanks, Alex. So we're now going to look at consent. We're going to explore what consent is and how you can support your young person at home and with understanding consent. So what is consent? According to the PSHE Association's definition, consent is an agreement which is given willingly and freely without exploitation, threat or fear, and by a person who has the capacity to give their agreement. When we go into schools and work with young people, we like to use this acronym FRIES to help explain what consent is. So when we look at this acronym, we can see that consent must be freely given. This means consent must be given without force, pressure, coercion, or manipulation. Consent must be reversible. So this means that anybody can change their mind at any time, and that consent can also be withdrew as well at any point, even if something has been previously agreed. Consent also must be informed. This means that you need to have a full awareness of what exactly it is that you're agreeing to. Also needs to be enthusiastic, so you should only do things because you want to, not because you're feeling pressured or feeling obligated to do something. And finally, consent should be specific. So you may consent to one activity, but this does not necessarily mean that you've consented to another activity or the same activity in the future. So we're now going to explore consent and the law within the UK. So for the purpose of this slide, when we're referring to a child, in UK law, this is any person under the age of 18. And we use this timeline with young people as well. So if we look at the timeline, we can see that at the age of 10 is when you become legally responsible for your actions. The age of 13 is when you can access sexual health services. At the age of 16 is the legal age in which you are capable of giving sexual consent. And the age of 18 is when you can legally take and send naked images or pictures of yourself. So as we can see, even though the legal age of sexual consent in the UK is 16, you do have to be 18 to be able to take and send intimate images. And the reason for this is because any intimate image of someone under the age of 18 is treated and classed as child pornography. And possessing or even looking at an intimate image of someone under the age of 18 could be a crime. But it's important to recognise that these laws are put in place to protect young people. So if there was a scenario or an incident where two young people who were both under the age of 18 shared intimate images, these can be reported to the police, but they may decide not to take any formal action against a young person. The police use something called Outcome 21, and they use that to decide if there needs to be a criminal charge in cases which involve young people. Just again, remember that these laws is to protect and safeguard our young people. So how can we support children and young people with consent at home? So it's really important when we talk about consent with young people that we're not just talking about sexual consent, and we should be talking about consent from a really young age. We can talk to children and just make sure that they're aware that their body belongs to them and that they have the right to say who and who cannot touch their body. Alex touched on this earlier on in the training when we spoke about the spiral curriculum and how consent can be built upon from a really young age. So when you're talking to your young child about consent, you could say to them that they are able to say no to kisses or hugs from relatives or family members, and you can support your child's wishes and respect your child's wishes by offering family members alternatives, such as a high five or perhaps a thumbs up. When you're having these conversations about consent, it's important that you're talking about safe or unsafe touches. You could also describe it as good or bad touches with your child, and this will help give them the information that they need to be able to recognise their own bodily autonomy. Again, you can use the NSPCC resource, the PANTS resource, to help support these conversations at home. As young people begin to enter more sexually intimate relationships, it's really important that you're exploring with your young person that consent must be enthusiastic, and also recognise the importance of checking in with their partner to make sure that their partner is comfortable and happy with continuing any other forms of intimacy. And it's also important to recognise that body language is just as important as verbal reactions. People's body language can tell us if someone is unhappy or uncomfortable, and can also tell us and give us signs that maybe someone isn't consenting. So when we're speaking about body language, look at your partner. Are they moving away? Are they rigid and tense? Are they avoiding eye contact? And this might be a way to determine whether or not they are happy and they are consenting with the activity. And finally, it's also really important to make young people be aware of the laws in the UK, particularly around someone's capacity to consent. So, for example, if someone is under the influence of alcohol or drugs, they legally cannot consent. If someone is asleep, they cannot consent. Also within the UK law, any child who is under the age of 13 legally cannot consent to any sexual activity. And it's also really important to recognise that any sexual activity without consent is classed as rape and sexual assault. After this training, if you would like to reach out to our team, we have lots of different resources that can be used to support these conversations and discussions at home. If you just want to drop us an email, and we can provide you with some resources and activities. So we're now going to move on to healthy relationships, and we're going to think about the different types of relationships that young people might experience, as well as explore some of the signs that your young person is in a healthy relationship, also known as green flags. So as young people begin to navigate entering their first relationship, it's just really important as parents and carers that we're aware of the different types of relationships that young people may enter. Our understanding of relationships is changing, and the way that young people are reframing what relationships mean may be different to what our own experiences of relationships might have been. So romantic relationships, these tend to centre on a connection between two people, and the connection is based on emotional and physical attraction, and these are typically monogamous. Casual relationships, so you may have heard your young person refer to these as a situationship, and these tend to have the perks of an inclusive relationship but without the commitment. An open relationship is the agreement of more than one romantic or sexual partner at a time, but these do require mutual consent and strong communication for these to work and to be healthy. Asexual relationships, so these tend to focus on creating romantic and emotional intimacy in comparison to what might be seen in typical relationships that involve sex. Polyamorous, so these are consensual multi-partner relationships with different people of different sexes at the same time, but again may require lots of communication, boundaries, and of course consent. Lots of young people are now forming relationships via the internet, so through social media and dating apps. And now quite a lot of young people are actually choosing to remain single and beginning to challenge the stigma around being single and what that means. Sexual relationships are a connection between two people that involves physical and or emotional intimacy, and sexual relationships may not always be romantic or committed relationships. And finally, we also have friendships as well. So lots of young people will experience different types of friendships within their lives, and we can explore how friendships can also be healthy or unhealthy as well. So how to support your young person. So how can you support somebody who is LGBTQ+? So for parents and carers, navigating conversations around sexuality and gender with young people may be quite challenging, but it's really important that we're approaching this subject with openness, understanding and support. It's really important that you're letting your child know that you care and support them unconditionally. So using simple affirmations such as I'm here for you, I love you, and I will support you no matter what, can be incredibly powerful. It's also really important to accept and respect the person that you're supporting, and remember to take who they say they are seriously. So this includes not just assuming that it's a phase or a trend or that they'll change their mind. Try and find opportunities to learn about these topics to help avoid misconceptions. And again, just understanding that sexual orientation and gender identity are not phases or conditions that need to be cured. And just find those moments to talk positively about LGBTQ+ topics and include them in social activities as much as possible. Build trust with your child, so show a genuine interest in their day, ask about their life, their friends and their interests. You may also have questions about the LGBTQ+ community, and remember it is okay to be curious, it is okay to want to learn more, but try and avoid asking intrusive questions. So for example, questions about someone's sex life or parts of their body aren't appropriate to ask anybody unless they've said that it's okay to do so. Try and use indirect conversations and media examples to discuss more significant issues like sexuality and gender in a less confrontational way, and that will come up quite often in stage training as well, and Alex did touch on this earlier on. And it's okay to reach out for support, especially if you're feeling overwhelmed. Collaborate with educators, healthcare providers, and LGBTQ+ organisations for guidance and support. Also important to be aware of any changes in your child's behaviour that could indicate that there are signs of bullying or isolation due to their sexuality or gender identity. And with that, make sure that you're finding opportunities to advocate for your child. So stay in touch with teachers and be proactive about addressing any issues of bullying or exclusion. In day-to-day life, try and find opportunities to challenge discrimination and misconceptions. An example of this could be correcting somebody when they use the wrong words to describe someone else. And finally, don't assume that your young person is heterosexual. Create opportunities to say that you'll love them regardless of their sexual orientation. We also touched on this earlier, but recognise your own bias as well. And when we remove those biases and our preconceived ideas about what we think about our young person, it will help to create a much more safer and inclusive space for your young person or child. So the Outhouse is a charity that provides support and information to the lesbian, gay, bisexual and trans people of Essex. They are based in Colchester Town Centre and they provide a range of services. They also have a lot of youth groups across Essex for young people ages 13 to 17. And if this is something you are interested in finding out more about, they do have a website which will signpost to local services and groups that may be near you. So we're now going to think about signs of a healthy relationship, and young people may refer to these as green flags. So when we're thinking about green flags in a relationship, it's really important that we recognise that mutual respect is crucial for a healthy and safe relationship to develop. This is where both people value each other's thoughts, feelings, and boundaries. Open communication. So a healthy relationship needs open communication between partners. They can feel safe to be able to discuss their problems and without worry or fear of judgment from their partner. Trust and security. This means that your partner isn't checking phones and that there isn't this constant suspicion or pressure within the relationship. Emotional support. So your partner or your friend should be able to encourage and uplift and provide that support. Independence. So it's really important in a healthy relationship that each partner still maintains having their own interests, still spending time with their own friends, as well as making sure they've got time to themselves. And finally, healthy conflict resolution is also really important. In a healthy relationship, we're not trying to say that disagreements won't happen, but it's how these disagreements are resolved, and they're resolved through respect, kindness, rather than through arguments, blame, or through shouting. And then, of course, does the relationship bring happiness rather than stress? This can be an indicator as well, especially for young people who may struggle to identify these signs. Thinking about how it makes them feel is a good indicator of whether or not their relationship is healthy or unhealthy. So we're now going to think about boundaries. So boundaries are really important to help young people develop and maintain healthy relationships. Boundaries can help maintain your identity as well as your autonomy. If we don't have boundaries, it can lead us to feeling burnt out, feeling overwhelmed, or taken for granted and emotionally drained. Boundaries help to ensure safety because they define what is and isn't acceptable. And it can also be used as a guideline to help us resolve disagreements respectively. It's also really important when talking about boundaries with your young person that they're not just limited to intimate or sexual relationships. We can have boundaries in our work lives, in our friendships, and within our families as well. And it's also important to note that boundaries are not just demands or ways to control people. So an example of this could be if one partner asks their other partner, I want to have sex 4 times a week. It's important to note that this isn't a boundary, this is a demand and would override their partner's autonomy. And as a parent and carer, try and find opportunities to discuss your own boundaries. Think about the boundaries you have in your own relationship. Think about the boundaries you have in your own friendships as well as your work life before discussing with your child what potential boundaries they might have or may want to have in their own relationships.
Okay, so now we're going to start exploring what an unhealthy relationship might look like and what some of the signs are that someone may be experiencing an unhealthy relationship and where you can get support if somebody was in an unhealthy relationship. So a bit like when we were looking at healthy relationships, we're going to start off with our signs of unhealthy relationship, looking at the red flags. So some of these things can happen in an unhealthy relationship, and there are other things that can happen as well. And it's incredibly important to recognise that no relationship or 2 relationships are the same. So every relationship is unique, but everyone deserves the right to feel safe and respected and cared for in a relationship. So some of the signs of unhealthy relationship might be control and manipulation. So one person dictates what the other does, who they see or what they wear. There could be that there's a lack of trust within that relationship. So you might be noticing that there's constant jealousy. They might be checking their phone quite a lot or demanding passwords, or your young person might have to give their passwords up. There might be a fear of speaking up or speaking out about what's happening to them. So they feel anxious about expressing their opinions or saying no to things as well. And there could be physical or sexual pressure. So being coerced into anything they're uncomfortable with, feeling that kind of pressure to do things they're not comfortable with and they don't want to do, and not feeling like they can say no to that. And ultimately, all of these things will lead to someone feeling drained or unhappy in their relationship. So if there's more stress than joy in the relationship, then that is a sign that it could be an unhealthy relationship. And this could be a friendship, it could be a romantic relationship, it could be a sexual relationship. So it's very important that we also talk about friendships. And sometimes young people will refer to it as a toxic relationship, and when they're talking about the signs. So some of the other signs might be that they're spending little time with yourselves as family or little time with their friends, that they're constantly changing what they wear, or they might have had quite a drastic like wardrobe change. Always needing to let the person know where they are, what they're doing. So constantly on their phone, constantly checking in, and when a message comes, being quite stressed about replying quite quickly. And they might be having their money access, so they might be losing money. They could have their day-to-day items controlled, so they might be feeling reluctant to go to school or college or work, depending on where they're at in their life stage as well. Or some of the other signs might be that you've just noticed a change in your child's mood or behaviour, and you're worried that something's wrong. Maybe they're being bullied or experiencing some sort of sexual bullying. Either it could be online or within one of their relationships at home or in school. So it's really important that we understand these signs, and we're going to look at resources and support services in a second to get help. Some of the other things to look out for would be something called love bombing. So if you haven't heard of love bombing before, according to Refuge, which is a charity for women and children experiencing domestic abuse, love bombing is where one person pressures the other to take the relationship steps just too quickly. So it could be including excessive or unwanted gift giving, so kind of that like giving lots of gifts, lots of love, lots of affirmations really early on. And unlike genuine love, which respects your boundaries and develops a comfortable pace, love bombing is designed to overpower and control the other person. So it can lead to the person feeling quite overwhelmed and feeling like they are dependent on their partner, whoever they're dating. And it might be more difficult for them to recognize the signs of abuse and leave that relationship. And it can do and usually does lead to manipulative forms of control as well. So what does it look like? It can look like constant messages and demanding replies immediately. So we touched on that a bit before in the red flags. But also thinking about the future really early into the relationship. So talking about, having kids, getting married potentially, or just living together, but they've only known each other a really short amount of time. It could be excessive compliments or gifts, or love and affection at the early stages in the relationship that just isn't sustainable throughout the relationship. It could be saying you're the one early in the relationship before fully getting to know one another, or it could be spending or wanting to spend all of their free time together, so kind of losing their social circles, not spending time with friends, those kind of things. So what can we do? We can encourage the person to set boundaries early on in the relationship. So what are their boundaries? What's going to make them feel safe and happy, but also what's going to be sustainable for them? They could be sharing their feelings and talk about where and why they're feeling this way. So maybe, the gifts are a bit much, and maybe we could stagger it out a bit. I don't want to talk about the future yet. Let's get to know each other, those kind of things. Or it could be taking a step back and limiting contact, or even stopping seeing someone for a while. And if, again, your young person is worried about this, it's really important that they feel that they can speak out. And they know the signs to look for with love bombing, because the thing with love bombing is it all happens really early in the relationship to gain control. And then as the relationship goes on, that's when the manipulation and the abuse starts to come in. But by that point, they are so dependent, they normally have lost their social circles, that they feel like there's no way out as well. And then we are going to talk a little bit about gaslighting. So according to the NSPCC, gaslighting is also a form of manipulation. So this is where perpetrators make someone doubt their own perception of what has happened, what is real, doubt their own judgment, or even their memory of what's happened. So it is a form of abuse, a recognised form of abuse. It is grounded in power and control again. So just like love bombing, it's all about getting power and control over another person. And it normally starts more subtly and then escalates as the relationship progresses as well. So gaslighting, for people who have experienced gaslighting, they may develop low confidence, low self-esteem, and they may feel they've lost control over their own feelings. So what does it look like? So it could be denying events or conversations that have happened, that they know have happened. And when that keeps going on, actually you start to question your own reality. It could be twisting conversations to shift blame onto the other person so that the perpetrator doesn't have to be accountable for what they've done, and make the other person feel guilty and like they've done something wrong when they haven't. It could be minimalizing emotions, thoughts and feelings as well. So, don't be so dramatic. Why are you always blowing these things, out of proportion, those kind of things. It makes you doubt yourself or your own judgment. It's telling other people things about you that just aren't true. So it's not only doing it to you, but it's making other people see you in a different way as well, when it's just not true. Also lying to you directly. But by that point, you usually have you're so worried about what is real, what you're experiencing, that actually the lies become your truth. And it makes you feel like your thoughts and feelings are invalid as well. So what can we do to somebody who may have experienced gaslighting and, low confidence, where they've lost control over their feelings? So what we would like to say is encourage them to keep a diary or a journal to track things that have happened. So it could be even through texting or emailing a friend if they cannot keep a physical journal, if that's not safe for them, just to say what happened when. And you could even date it and have the time on it so that you can look back and be like, no, this is actually what I experienced. And should they then want to go and get support for that, then they can go and they will have evidence of how that's happening to them. And also it's good for your own self-worth and self-esteem as well. Talk with trusted adults and friends, share experiences with someone you trust, and there are many hotlines of support if they don't feel confident speaking to a friend or trusted adult. And again, we're going to look at all sorts of different support services soon. I'd like to remind you that if you do want to take a break at any point, please do so, and you can pause the video and come back to it when you feel ready. So next we're going to look at something called negging. So negging stands for negative feedback. So this is where the perpetrator intentionally undermines their partner by using insults disguised as compliments. So what might this look like? So it could be negative comments about your appearance, your intelligence, your life choices, or your personality, making fun of you repeatedly, trying to one-up you, so overshadow your achievements, backhanded compliments, or targets insecurities and then brushes it off as flirting or banter. And it's really important because a lot of young people will say, oh, that's just banter, or they're just flirting with me. But actually, if it's making you feel bad, it's making you question your self-worth, or for whatever reason you're uncomfortable with it, then actually that's not banter or flirting. And you're allowed to speak out about that. So the things we can do to help our young people is encourage them to speak out about how it makes them feel. They can speak to a trusted adult, a friend, or support services. So, Childline, for example, or the NSPCC. And also to encourage the person to not attempt to change the other person. So negging, tends to come from a place of insecurity on the perpetrator's part. And they may actually, the only way to end it is to end communication or the relationship. And it's just important to remember, if a relationship isn't making you happy, then it might be time to end that relationship at that point. So how to support your young person? So if they are experiencing any signs or multiple signs of an unhealthy relationship, how can you support them? So it's really important that we listen and we give support, and we try not to make any accusations. We don't judge them. We don't do something called victim shaming or blaming. It's really important that we understand that what they're experiencing is real for them, and it's not their fault that this is happening to them. They may feel ashamed of what's happening in their relationship. They may feel embarrassed about it. Many people have fear that their parents will overreact or blame them, be disappointed as well, and other worries that other young people worry that their parents won't believe them or fully understand it as well. So if they do come to you to talk, let it be on their terms and meet them with understanding, not with judgment, basically. It's really important next that we accept what the young person is telling us as the truth. So some perpetrators will say things like, nobody's going to believe you. So showing any form of doubt may reinforce that idea that actually they're not going to be believed, and that then they'll be hesitant to tell you again in the future or anyone else if something is wrong. So we need to be offering unconditional support and making sure that they know that we are taking them seriously and that we are concerned, and that we are just there to support them should they want and need it. Show concern. So ask open-ended questions, listen and validate their feelings. It's really important. Understand their emotions and experiences, but most importantly, tell them that you're there for them. You're there to support them. Talk about the behaviours, not the person. So this is, again, when we talk about distancing techniques, it can be really helpful. So rather than being critical of the partner, we want to be focusing on the behaviours so that they don't become defensive. So, for example, instead of saying your partner is controlling, you could say, well, you know what, it concerns me that they tell you who you can and can't text or who you can and can't see. Remember that they still may love the person they're with. They may be loving the relationship, and respect your young person's feelings around that. And actually, when we start to talk about the behaviour, they will come to that conclusion themselves, usually. So it's really important to avoid criticising their partner and talk about the behaviours that they should be expecting and what they're actually receiving. Avoid ultimatums. So obviously this is caveated by safeguarding. So if they're in a really unsafe situation, you have to do what you need to do. But otherwise, if it is that you're just concerned about something and you're talking to them, so we want to resist the urge. For example, if you don't break up with them right now, you're grounded. And actually, for a breakup to be truly successful, the young person has to be ready and willing to walk away from that relationship. So if we force that decision, they may be tempted to return to their partner because of any kind of unresolved feelings. They might do it secretly. And actually leaving an unhealthy or potentially abusive relationship can be quite dangerous for those in those relationships. So there may need to be safety planning put in place as well. And there are organisations that you can reach out to for support with that. So some of those are on the page, as you can see, but you've also got Compass as well, should you need extra support, but we'll talk about them a bit more in depth in a minute. Should you need to create a safety plan, you can get support from a place like Compass. You can get a IDVA, so an independent domestic abuse advisor, violence advisor, sorry, and they can help with creating a safety plan, and they can help someone who's experienced abuse feel prepared for different situations and be more independent when they're ready to leave the relationship. They can also talk about, what would be safe for them. So if that young person has got a controlling partner who wants to know where they are all the time, then they'll look at ways to block that and make sure that they are going to be safe where they go out and on their journeys and stuff like that. So really important to know about that. Always support signpost to our support services. It's really important that young people are aware of what support services are around them. And you can find that locally as well. So there's an app called Frontline, and it can be really helpful. So if you are in somewhere in Essex and you're worried about anything from domestic abuse to I would say homelessness to food banks, you can type that in and it will show you what support services are local to your area. So Frontline is a really good app to have a look at, and you can get that on the App Store. Some of the things we can do to help our young people would be talking about boundaries, again, starting that quite early on. Encourage them to limit contact with the people that are making them feel bad or are hurting them in any way. Listen to them and validate them. Help them to recognise the signs of an unhealthy and healthy relationship. You could do some journaling and a diary to track what's going on. Always have organisations you can direct to who can provide professional help. And then explore options that may include ending the relationship or communication safely, and what might need to be put in place should they need extra support. So there are different helplines. So you've got the National Domestic Abuse Helpline, and they're open 24 hours a day, every day. So you can find those online. They do have a website and there's a phone number. You've got the men's advice line as well, and they're open Monday to Friday, 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. And again, they do have a website and a phone number, so you can find them online. And you've got Gallup as well. So that's the National LGBT plus Domestic Abuse Helpline. And again, they're open Monday to Friday, 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. And they also do have a website that you can go on and get all the information. So how should we be approaching these conversations? What we want to be doing is trying to use open-ended questions, create an open dialogue. So instead of saying things like, I hope you're not in a toxic relationship, you tell me right, we could be saying things like, I know relationships can be complicated sometimes. How do you think someone can tell if you're in a good one? So instead of saying, you need to make sure your partner respects you, we could be saying things like, what do you think makes a relationship feel safe and respectful? So some of the things we could be asking is, what do you think your friends think? What do your friends think of your partner? What do you think? What do you think about the relationship? And do you think the relationship is healthy or unhealthy? And then explore why they have those answers as well. Okay, so how to approach conversations again. So remember, it's okay to have a few short conversations rather than trying to cover everything at once. That can be quite overwhelming. People can shut down. So if your young person starts to become comfortable, don't continue or press the issue, but be encouraging and let them know that you're there for them whenever they need it. They can come back. You can continue the conversation. Just because you're ending it there doesn't mean you're ending the conversation fully, should they want it. But instead of saying things like oversharing or making the conversation about you, sorry, instead of making the conversation about you or oversharing, we could be saying things like, when I was younger, I didn't always realize what a healthy relationship looked like. I wish I'd known that. And then saying the things that you wish you'd known as well. Also, you could say things like, I saw that storyline in, I don't know, whatever TV show, where one person kept checking their partner's phone. What do you think about that? So kind of using, like we said, media, things in real life to start these conversations, and things that they might be able to relate to as well. So like we said, we do have lots of different activities, and should you want any activities, please do send us an email and we can get those out to you. So there's different things that we use. So we use the NSPCC learning. So like we said, there's the PANTS one there. So it's a way of teaching about bodily autonomy and boundaries. You can do red flag, green flag activities. We have an activity called the relationship pizza. So we try and put toppings on that we do want on our pizza. We have a dream partner activity, and this is a really interesting one because usually most people will put on quite superficial things to begin with, but then you can ask more questions. So, you know, does your family like your partner? What are their hobbies? What do they earn? Those kind of things. So they can really start thinking about actually what would they want their life to look like with somebody later on? Would it be important to them that actually their partner does get on with their family? How do they handle conflict? Those kind of things. Relationship timeline, and also something called the intimacy pyramid. So it's about thinking about what you want in a relationship, what's important to you, and you can actually compare it to other people's pyramid, but knowing that your pyramid is yours and no one else can change that for you. So the most important things at the top, and at the bottom, the things that aren't so important to you, but also you want in your relationship. So it's just really important to know that if you do want any of these resources or support, we have got them and we can support you with that. So if you are worried about your young person's behaviour in a relationship, then there are organisations and charities that are specifically for people that, you know, may be worried about their behaviour, maybe being abusive in their relationship. So you've got the Change Project, and that offers confidential support for young people of the ages 11 to 18. And if they have any sort of additional needs, learning needs, then they will go up to 25. And that's for people who want to change their behaviour and improve awareness of healthy communication in relationships as well. And then you've got Cranston, so that Reset seeks to support children and young people who are experiencing domestic abuse or who are actually exhibiting harmful behaviours in their relationship also. And a bit later on, we are going to look at another service called RSHE, and that is also for people that are perpetrating kind of harm in the relationship, and they're just there to put in a non-judgmental way to support those people to make the positive changes that they may need, because we know there's lots of reasons why people do that, and it might be from their own experiences, it might be from low self-esteem, and it's just important that they also get the help they need to stop being harmful in relationships. Okay, so we've just looked at our section on unhealthy relationships, and we're just going to move into recognizing signs of abuse in a relationship. So I'd like to do a trigger warning now that this can be quite uncomfortable to go through, and we are going to be talking about sexual abuse, emotional and psychological abuse, verbal abuse, physical, financial and economic abuse, and coercive control. So this can happen in any relationship and in lots of different ways, and abuse is always wrong, and it is never the fault of the individual being abused. It can take many forms, and type of abuse may overlap, so an individual may also experience more than one type of abuse in a relationship as well. So domestic abuse is a term used to define physical, emotional, psychological, economic, tech, and or sexual abuse from an intimate partner or between people who are personally connected. So we are going to be discussing, like I said, some sensitive topics. We're going to look at the signs and the types of abuse, including the following things that are on the page. And what we do want to do is just make sure that if you do need to take some time for yourself, or if you do want to contact us, please do so and take this at your own pace. So when we talk about sexual abuse, we are going to be talking about rape or sexual assault. We are talking about having sex when unable to consent, and force or threats to engage in sexual activity. And then emotional and psychological abuse, when we talk about that, we're talking about kind of mocking, calling hurtful names, checking in constantly, belittling or humiliating somebody, and manipulation as well. Then we've got verbal abuse. So we're talking about name calling, constant criticisms, threats, or implying that you will be harmed or punished in any way. Next on the list is the physical abuse. So that could be any type of restraining or restricting someone's movement. It could be punching, kicking, hitting, slapping, all of those kind of things. Or it could be breaking things, punching walls. So again, inciting fear as well. And then we've got financial and economic, so taking debts out in somebody else's name, controlling spending or controlling income, refusing to pay bills, and also obviously we've got coercive control at the bottom, and that's the first one we're going to go into on the next slide. So please do be mindful of the content and take support for yourselves. Okay. So coercive control was made illegal in England and Wales in December of 2015 with the introduction of the Serious Crime Act. So coercive control is defined as a purposeful pattern of behaviour which takes place over time in order for one individual to exert power, control or coercion over another. And that is the Home Office's definition of coercive abuse. So this form of abuse is designed to make a person dependent on their abuser. It isolates them from support, so everyday support like friendship groups, those kind of things, but also reaching out for other types of support from organisations. And it regulates their everyday behaviour and deprives them of independence. Coercive control usually leaves the victim in a constant state of fear, and experts have likened it to being taken hostage. The abuser works to limit the victim's independence and ability to make decisions and act, and the victim is left feeling like they are trapped in a world created by their abuser. So it's filled with confusion, contradiction, and lots of fear. So coercive control can have a damaging and long-term effect on the person's mental health and physical well-being, and that is also from Women's Aid. So here are some examples of coercive control and what that might look like. So yeah, like we said, it's controlling behaviour designed to make a person dependent by isolating them and exploiting them, depriving them of independence. So it might look like isolating from friends or family, depriving of basic needs, monitoring you, stopping you accessing support services as well. And so any controlling of coercive behaviour within an intimate or familial relationship is a crime, and persecutors can be prosecuted. What is really tricky with this type of abuse is that a lot of the time the people in these situations feel really trapped and like they can't get out of it, and it takes a lot of support. So it's really important to know that if you wanted support for this, you could contact Compass, and if you're depending on where you are, they'll post you to your closest domestic abuse service, and you can get something called an IDVA, and they would come and they would support you to make safety plans and be able to get out of that relationship as well. Okay, so what are young people experiencing in their relationships? So there was the Youth Endowment Fund surveyed over 10,000 teenage children, and they were aged 13 to 17 in England and Wales on their experiences of violence. So out of the 27% of 13 to 17-year-olds who say they have been in a relationship in the past 12 months, almost half had said that they had reported experienced violence or controlling behaviours from their partners. So when we're going to look now at some of the things that were coming up. Is that Here you go. So 20% have been pressured into sexual acts they did not want. 19% have been hit, kicked, or shoved. 45% of children in relationships say their partner constantly sends messages checking up on them. 27% are afraid to disagree with their partner in case they get angry. And 17% have had intimate images of themselves shared online. So there's a project called the Us Too Project, and they're a group of women with learning disabilities and or autism who have experienced domestic abuse and or sexual violence. So they also did a survey which was carried out amongst girls and women with learning disabilities, autism, or both, and it found that 17% think it's okay if their partner assaults them but then says sorry and buys some chocolates. 18% think it's okay if their partner tells them what to do the whole time. 1 in 3 had never heard of domestic abuse. And 100% do not know how to contact their local domestic abuse services. We do need to be mindful that those with learning difficulties and or autism can be more vulnerable to abuse within relationships, and it's really important that they understand what this might look like and that they're being taught this because they will be having relationships and they have the right to be in relationships, but also that they know where to get support. And I think that statistic really shocked everyone when we found that out. So 100% don't know how to contact their local domestic abuse service. So even just having those conversations about services locally is a really powerful tool to empowering young people. So who can young people turn to? So it's really important that young people have multiple people they can turn to. And when we do this activity of young people, we have a diagram of a hand that you can see on the screen. In that, we like to use the fingers to have people, and if they can name actual people that are in their lives, that's amazing. But we don't want them just to rely on their friends. A lot of young people say, oh, I'll speak to my friends before speaking to a trusted adult. But actually, young people shouldn't be asked to carry all the weight. So we do want them to have safe, trusted adults that they feel safe with. So whether that be school teaching staff, learning support assistants, a safeguarding team that they know of, it could be someone in their family. That's really important that they have those people there that they can go to outside of their friend group. And then it's really important that they also know of a few organisations that are local to them or nationwide that they could reach out to if they were experiencing anything and they wanted support with that. So kind of Childline, Samaritans, those kind of things. It's really important to be discussing that with our young people. So when we're thinking of support services for those who have experienced domestic abuse, we've spoken about this a little bit already, but the main one that we usually will talk about is Compass. So that is the Essex Domestic Abuse Helpline, an organisation in Essex. If you don't know what your local one is, Compass is a great one to call. So I work in West Essex, so Changing Pathways is our local service. So we found that out by calling Compass, and they told us that Changing Pathways would be the people we could talk to about getting an IDVA should we ever need one. And then you've got Refuge, and that's an organisation who supports survivors of domestic abuse. So it's really important to know what you have around you, what is local, but if you are in any doubt and you are in Essex, then please do call Compass and they can refer you on to other services as well. As parents and carers, it's really important that you also have a support service that's just for you. And that's where RSHE comes in. So these are the people that support people who care for survivors of sexual violence or survivors of violent crimes. They are there just for the people that are caring for the people going through something. So you're kind of seen as you know, victims in your own right, because actually you are also going through something by supporting somebody else that has gone through something really, really horrific. So you can call them, they can help you with all sorts of things from emotional well-being to court cases, to support groups. And again, you can find them online. So please do know that they are there for you as a supporter of your young people.
So we're now going to look at how to support your young person when a relationship ends. It's really important to recognise that rejection is a normal part of life, and many people will experience rejection or some form of a relationship breakdown in their life. And the next few slides we're going to consider and think about how you can support your young person if their relationship has ended. And that could be if they're the one who's ended the relationship, and also if perhaps they're the one who has been broken up with. So what can you do to support your young person? First of all, it's really important just to listen to your young person. Let them talk as much as they need and as much as they want. And remember, don't feel like you need to respond or to offer advice. Young people just want to know that their voices are being heard and that their feelings are being validated. So let them know that you hear how they are feeling and how difficult it is. And most importantly, validate and tell them that what they are feeling is completely normal. Try to avoid relating as well. I know it may be tempting to share your own stories of heartbreak, but this is really helpful. And again, only offer advice if they ask for it. Then think also about encouraging them to avoid social media, or perhaps taking a break from social media as well. Talk about the benefits of avoiding or limiting social media after the breakup, or at least limiting interactions with their former significant other. Remind them about the drawbacks of potentially posting in highly emotional times. So if they did decide to post things on their social media, it could be that they're in a heightened sense, they're in heightened emotions, and therefore may regret what they've posted at a later date. Try and encourage your young person to maintain a routine, so support their mental health by making sure they're sticking to a regular sleep schedule so that they're sleeping regularly, making sure that they're still maintaining any exercise or hobbies, as well as eating regularly. Once your young person begins to feel a little bit better, then use that opportunity to offer some fun activities. Give them opportunities to have experiences that remind them who they are, remind them that they've got support and they've got their friends and family around them, and find those activities to build opportunities to help build their self-esteem. It's also really important to try and model healthy relationships within your own relationship. So let your young person observe you maintaining healthy boundaries, expressing your needs and showing mutual consent, and model this within all types of relationships. It isn't just limited to intimate relationships. You could model healthy relationships within friendships and the family as well. And then finally, some people may find journaling or writing a letter a really useful tool to help them get their emotions out of their bodies. You could also encourage dancing or singing or physical movement if they don't feel like sending a letter, or perhaps they don't enjoy writing. And finally, just remember, you don't know exactly how they feel. Everybody is unique. Everyone will experience a relationship breakdown in different ways. So try to avoid just assuming that you understand their experience and that you're the expert, and just give them that safe space so that they can talk to you and discuss how they are feeling. If they continue to be impacted or their emotions don't appear to be improving, then please do seek professional help. You can seek further support from CAMS, which is the Child and Adolescent Mental Health Services as well. And they can give guidance and support and offer interventions if that's what's needed for your young person. So how can we support a young person with learning disabilities or autism when a relationship ends? So again, we've already touched on this, but it's really important that we talk about rejection and how this is part of everyday life, and it's perfectly normal to experience rejection. When a relationship ends, some neurodivergent individuals may struggle with that change. So as a parent and carer, try and stick to familiar and daily routines to be able to provide that stability and security. They may also need a safe, quiet space that they can retreat to, especially if there is sensory needs there. So try and support and identify these. When you're talking to your young person, avoid using any euphemisms and make sure to use clear language. You can also use social stories or images to help explain when a relationship has ended and just to let them know that they are safe and that they are cared for. MenCap is a really good website. They have a range of resources and easy read guides that can support people with disabilities after a relationship ends. So I would really recommend having a look at that website and seeing what resources are available. And Brooke also have a video which is signed in British Sign Language that also explains how to manage and cope with a breakup as well. So there are lots of different resources, and if you would like any resources that's been mentioned in this slide, if you do want to just send us an email and we can provide those to you. So we're now going to explore online relationships. We spoke earlier on in the training that many young people are now meeting people online through either dating apps or social media. So we're going to be thinking about some of the potential implications and just things to consider when entering an online relationship. So we know that growing numbers of young people are meeting other people and forming relationships online. And if your young person has built a relationship with someone online, it is only natural that they will want to meet or arrange to meet them in person. So how can you help your young person to stay safe when meeting up with someone they've met online? Really important, and we recommend this in our young people's packages and training as well, that they've had the opportunity to FaceTime or video call the person prior to meeting up. You could also encourage your young person to Google reverse search the person that they've been speaking to profile pic. You could also ask them to do a picture or take a picture of them doing something random, for example, cooking dinner or maybe holding a certain item. And these are just ways for your young person to confirm that the person that they are speaking to is who they say they are. When it comes to actually meeting up with the person that your young person has been speaking to online, try and choose a daytime activity for meeting up, preferably a busy place where there's lots of members of the public about. If possible, and we would really recommend that you do this, is to drop them and pick them up from the location where they are meeting this person. Don't allow them to arrange their own transport or for their transport to be reliant on the person that they're meeting. So do try and pick them up and drop them off from where it is they're meeting. Always make sure that their phone is fully charged, and if they haven't done so already, we would also recommend that they have some form of phone tracking device turned on their phone. Some examples are Find My Friends, Snap Maps or Live 360. This means that you can be tracking their location and you'll have some warning signs if they move somewhere new or go to a different area, but you're constantly, you know exactly where they are at all times. And be on standby in case something does go wrong. So this is really important, and just make yourself available. So if there is any issues, your young person can ring you or message you, and you know that you're available there to support and help them. And always try and have a backup plan in case something doesn't feel right. When we've spoken to young people about this topic, we got some feedback from young people, and they did express that they want to be told how to meet up safely with people they have met online, rather than being told not to meet up at all. There may be some circumstances where actually your young person, it may not be appropriate for them to meet someone they've met up online. You need to think about some of the following questions, such as how do they cope in new or stressful situations? Are they able to manage meeting up with their friends on their own? Are they able to self-regulate their emotions well? Do they have additional needs? And therefore, would they require adult support? And finally, would they be likely to tell you or another trusted adult if something did go wrong? So it's really important to consider those questions as well before your young person meets up with someone they've met online. So we're now going to think about tech facilitated abuse. So tech facilitated abuse is where perpetrators use technology in an attempt to control, harass or intimidate. They may also carry out physical, sexual, psychological or economic abuse through the use of technology. And on the slide here, you can see some examples of how a perpetrator may commit tech facilitated abuse. For example, they may constantly be checking your location for using those location apps, just in an attempt to make your young person feel like they're being watched, that their movements are being watched all the time, and that can feel really uncomfortable and unsafe. There's also been reports that devices such as Alexas or Amazon Echoes have been used to monitor, harass or harm the other partner in a relationship. If somebody is constantly demanding having access to accounts and passwords, this is also another form of tech facilitated abuse. And we've also touched on this earlier when we spoke about signs of an unhealthy relationship and signs of love bombing as well. So constantly calling and messaging could also be a sign of tech facilitated abuse. So both Refuge Changing Pathways provide more information around this area and can also support people who may be experiencing this. And you can find out some more information on both of their websites. So we're now going to move on to thinking about pornography. So last year, I think this was in August or July 2025, the Children's Commissioner created and brought out the report, Sex is Kind of Broken Now. And this report was about young people's experiences with pornography. So some of the findings were that 70% of respondents had seen porn online. 44% of respondents had reported seeing a depiction of rape, and children with SEN needs or additional needs were more likely to have seen pornography. So 76% of SEN children had seen pornography. And this is really interesting as well. So when young people were asked where they were viewing or where they were finding pornography and harmful pornography, it was most commonly found on X, which is a social media app which is formerly known as Twitter. And I think that's just really interesting to be aware that actually, you know, pornography can be accidentally stumbled upon. It's not necessarily that our young people are seeking or searching for pornography when it appears to be so easily accessible on certain social media sites. So that's just something as a parent and carer for you to be aware of. So how can you speak to your young person about pornography? And this can be quite a difficult, quite an embarrassing subject to talk about, but the likelihood that your young person has seen pornography is quite high, and when we think about the statistics, so it's important that we are addressing this and we are seeking opportunities to talk about this. So when you are thinking about having a conversation or starting a conversation with your young person, it's really important that you're aware of your own opinions and viewpoints on porn. So try and not be judgmental, okay? So create that safe space and just reassure your young person that you're there to listen and not to judge about what it is that they've been viewing or seeing. Really important to talk about consent, which we've touched on earlier. In pornography, a lot of the sexual activity and acts that are seen in porn very rarely show those conversations around consent. So just making those links and making sure that young people are aware that actually things they are seeing in pornography isn't realistic and doesn't consider things such as consent, boundaries, contraception, and protection as well against sexually transmitted infections. So having these conversations will help your young people to be more informed about what it is that they are seeing. And then finally, we're going to think about intimate image sharing as well. So this was touched on earlier. Alex gave some statistics about how many young people had experienced intimate image sharing abuse within their relationships. So why might young people share intimate images? They might share them because it's fun, because they want to show their love for somebody. They may want to feel close to their partner or be intimate. It might be that they're feeling they want validation, they want to feel sexy to their partner. There could also be elements of peer pressure, so perhaps their friendships and their peers are engaging in image sharing, and this idea that everybody else is doing it. And with the introduction of apps such as Snapchat, which allow for temporary images, perhaps young people may feel because these images aren't permanent, it creates that safety net for them to be able to share these intimate images. So what are the potential risks of intimate image sharing? Firstly, it could cause loss of control. So once that image has been sent, there is no guarantee that that image is safe and secure. And if we do lose control of this image, it could lead to something called online blackmail. It's also referred to as sextortion. So this is where a young person may be blackmailed for money or for further images to prevent their intimate image being shared with others, with family members and with friends. If an image is shared to others, particularly within a school setting or a college, this could lead to instances of bullying or isolation, and it could also lead to online sexual harassment as well. Flooding is where a picture is put up and displayed across various websites and apps and can make it quite difficult to get the images down. So those are just some of the potential risks of sharing an image. So what would you do if your young person tells you that their image has been shared? So first of all, please do not view, share or save the image or video. We spoke about earlier about the consent and the law in the UK. So just a reminder that a person under the age of 18 is classed as a child in the UK. So viewing, saving or sharing that image could be classified as viewing an image of child pornography. So please do not view or save the image. Remember to keep a safe space and remain calm and non-judgmental. Your young person has come to speak to you and you need to make sure that you're providing that safe space and make sure that you know that you are supporting them rather than blaming them for sharing the intimate image. There's also lots of different sites that you can report to. So we've got the Internet Watch Foundation. You can also report this to the police. And Childline also has something called the Report Remove tool, which helps to remove shared or leaked nude images to young people under the age of 18 in the UK. If you would like to find out more information about the Report Remove tool, there is the Childline website that you can access. You can also just search Report Remove and it will bring up a video with more information on how young people can take down images. That's a really useful tool as a parent and carer to be aware of.
Okay, thank you for being with us during this workshop, and we've been going through lots of different topics, some of them quite heavy, as well as to make sure that you're taking care of yourselves. We're now going to look at the support services that are available and different resources that are out there to support you having these conversations with your young people, but also knowing where you can also get advice and support from. And should your young people need that advice or support, you'll know where to refer them to as well. So we're going to start with the SHORE website. This is part of the Lucy Faithwell Foundation. And this has a lot of questions for answered for young people around healthy sexual relationships. If a young person wants to change their own behaviour or is looking for reliable information, this is somewhere they can go. So it is a safe space. It is also a non-judgmental space for perpetrators of violence within a relationship. And there's lots of different safety plans on there and different organisations that they can be referred to for support as well. So it's a really good one to know about should your young person be worried about a friend's behaviour, their partner's behaviour, or their own behaviour. When we're thinking about resources to support young people with disabilities and STEM, we can look at lots of different places. Some of the most common places to go to that are easily accessible is MenCap. So they have lots of advice for after breakups, lots of easy read advice there as well, and advice for how to end a relationship. So should your young person need support with that, that's where you can go and look at. Learner 5 have lots of different resources, a really wide variety of resources and videos, and they're to support young people with relationships as well. And then you have Choice Support, and they have something called the Supported Loving Toolkit. And this has a range of links, support and information around relationships and sex. And also we do also have resources. So should you need any easy read resources, booklets, anything like that, then please do reach out to us, send us an email and we can get those resources over to you. Okay, on our website, so Essex Sexual Health website, we do have a section that is dedicated to parents and carers. This website offers a wealth of information, resources and support to parents and carers in having these kind of conversations and any conversations with their children on anything to do with relationships and sexual health. It also allows parents and carers to ensure they have access to the latest information, best practices in sexual health education, as well as keeping updated on RSHE or relationship and sexual health education as well. This is also where you can find videos, blogs, and again, you can find different resources on there. Should you want referrals and stuff like that, you can have a look for our wider website as well. If your young person is between the ages of 16 and 24, they can access the EC card app on their phone. If they do not have a smartphone, then they can also get a paper copy card of this. And basically they download an app, they fill in some information, they've got to watch some videos, they will complete a quiz, and once they've completed all of that and they've passed the quiz showing that they understand STIs, consent, then they can go in and use that app to get free condoms. They can get 10 condoms a week with lubricant, and with that they can only get that once a week. So once they've got their 10 condoms for that week, the app will lock them out from picking up at any other pickup points, and they just go in and scan a QR code as well and they will receive free condoms. So it's a really good one to know about should your young person be wanting to access condoms, because they are expensive and they can get contraception for free. We have our personal health record. So again, if your young person is between 16 plus, they can sign up to the personal health record. And through this, they'll be able to talk to us, come into clinics because we don't do walk-ins anymore. They can book STI testing. They can get an STI test kit sent to their home. They can talk about contraception and any kind of sexual health support. That's where you go to book an appointment. And you can also get condoms sent through the post directly to your home via the personal health record, the PHR. If your young person was younger, then they would need to call us up to get a booking or to talk to us, just so we can safeguard them and make sure they are safe when accessing our services. So in summary, well, first of all, thank you very much for coming along to this session, for watching it and staying with us through this. Again, if you need any support, please do reach out to us, and the next slide will have our email address on there. But basically what we've gone through today is to recognise the importance and benefits of RSHE, to understand how to speak to young people about healthy and unhealthy relationships, to recognise the signs of abuse within relationships, to feel equipped with some ideas and tools to initiate discussions around these subject areas with young people, and to have knowledge of local and other services available to support your young people. Like we said, please do reach out to us, and we are here to support you should you need it. And that's our email and phone number there.